All right, I should be live, and if I am, please let me know in the chat. That way I can get started talking about the top 10 SHTF events of 2024. A lot of things have happened this previous year, and we need to look back at some of these major events to try to learn from them and to remember why we prepare in the first place. Because honestly, it's pretty telling that these things all happened within the past year, and we're still here to talk about it. So it's a good place to be, honestly, but it is something that we need to learn from. So I do see people chiming in here in the chat. Cold Reality says, Happy New Year, Magic, and Happy New Year to you all as well. Although we do have to remember that next year can lead to even more SHTF events. So keep that in mind as you prepare. Sherman Sales says, SH by TF. We have Shadow Prepper with the 5x5, and I think everybody is here. So let's get going. And of course, I do want to mention that Midway USA is the biggest supporter of the channel. Thanks to them, I can do live streams like this one, give you good, pertinent information that's about preparedness, and give you some ideas about why we're preparing in the first place, which is the entire purpose of this conversation. A top 10 list of SHTF events that just occurred over the past year that we need to use as a reminder for why we do what we do. Now, I also want to say that you might not agree with this list, and that's totally fine. So please leave in the comments down below as well as in the chat if you think there's other events that I should have paid more attention to, or if there are any events that are missing or anything along those lines. So make sure you get involved with that. And if you're here on Replay Crew, you're amazing. Thank you so much for always coming back and listening to this information and chiming in the comments to let me know you're there, so that way I feel even more motivated to do this. So 2x4 coming in from Law of the Minimum. Robert P says 20x25. And Dandelion 159 says, yeehaw, release the hounds. And now I believe we can do that. So let's talk about the number one, or the first, because it's not the number one, it's just the first one on the list, I guess, because we're not going in order of priority, but we are going in order of date, okay? So these will be starting at the beginning of 2024 and then heading towards the end of 2024 to try to keep it linear in the sense of time, all right? Let's go with number one, which is when, and this is going to be kind of like the start of like a lot of other stuff that occurred, of course, but this is when Iran launched a drone and missile attack on Israel back in April of 2024. This was when a major escalation and a major expansion of the war in the Middle East began, okay? So this is just one of the top 10 for me because it kind of started everything really escalating in that region, and this is, of course, after quite a bit of time of ramping up different conflicts in that area, especially regarding the Gaza situation. But we also had the Red Sea scenario with the Houthis and everything else going on. But this was very significant because this was a direct attack on Israel by Iran, okay? So, just as a reminder, this is from the AP. This was from April 13th, 2024. Israel says Iran launched more than 300 drones and missiles, 99% of which were intercepted. Booms and air raid sirens sounded across Israel early Sunday after Iran launched hundreds of drones, ballistic missiles, and cruise missiles in an unprecedented revenge mission that pushed the Middle East closer to a region-wide war. A military spokesman said the launches numbered more than 300, but 99% of them were intercepted. Calling the outcome a very significant strategic success, Rear Admiral Daniel Hagari said Iran fired 170 drones, more than 30 cruise missiles, and more than 120 ballistic missiles. Of those, several ballistic missiles reached Israeli territory, causing minor damage to an air base. Okay? Now, they basically shot all of them down, but this was huge in the sense of Iran actually going through with attacking Israel directly, which is what has really led things down the path that we're currently witnessing, especially regarding everything going on in Syria and the entire Middle East as a whole. The Iranian attack, less than 2 weeks after a suspected Israeli strike in Syria that killed 2 Iranian generals in an Iranian consular building, marked the first time Iran has launched a direct military assault on Israel, despite decades of enmity dating back to the country's 1979 Islamic Revolution. So understand why this was so significant. Like I said, this was the first time Iran has launched a direct military assault on Israel. So that is a very significant SHTF event. That is when the war between Israel and Iran actually began, in the sense of being publicly accepted as those two nations being at war, at least in my opinion. And I think that this has led us down this path. And of course, this was due to a retaliation regarding something that occurred in Syria. And we all know what's going on in Syria right now, so you can just kind of see how this has escalated and spiraled ever since this event occurred. So that is the first thing on this list. Now, this happened in April, right? A lot of things happened within the last 8 months. So a few things happened at the beginning of the year as well, but these are just the top 10 that I could come up with that I thought were worth analyzing. And I also want to share with you all that, yes, there are other things that occurred in the beginning of the year that might be important to you, or maybe something that you find to be, I don't know, deserving of a priority point on this list. But obviously, 10 things can't do everything. For example, we had our soldiers were killed in Jordan at that air base back in January of 2024, and that was significant, but there wasn't any real retaliation or anything like that taken by our military, and it didn't lead to any additional measures or anything else that we were, following through with regarding Middle Eastern policy. So that's why I started with this one in April of 2024, because I thought it was a major escalation, okay? Now, what's up, Stephen Petrikowski? Good to see you. Mr. Landfill, thumbs up times thumbs up. Well, I appreciate that. If you want to give this video a thumbs up, that would be great. It would be the best live stream of the year if everybody in the chat gave it a thumbs up, shared it, and subscribed. So if you want to do that, I would appreciate it. Tyler Shoots, hey, Magic Prepper, what's your favorite hammer-fired pistol? As of right now, probably HK USP, because I've been firing it quite a bit, and it actually allows me to use winter gloves. But I have been firing the Beretta M9A4 quite a bit as well. I like it a lot. The only reason I might say the USP over it is mostly because the M9A4 is rather large for carry, and the USP is a lot more suitable for that role. So that's where I'm at. Now, let's talk about where we're at with number 2 on the list of top 10 SHTF events of 2024. Now, this is kind of not necessarily like an SHTF event, but it was a reminder of what organized political movements can do in the United States and how they can be very destructive or disruptive when it comes to getting together and pushing a narrative or an ideology or even an agenda that doesn't really necessarily align with a constitutional republic. And what came out of this was some dangerous things, including certain training manuals that had correlations to how, let's just say, bad people want to train other people to do bad things to good people, right? Timeline of the nationwide protest movement that began at Columbia University. Yes, this is about the pro-Palestine movement that occurred here in the United States. And this was starting in April of 2024 when it really escalated to where they started to actually take over college campuses. And then, of course, this is from May 6th, 2024 from the AP. And this is talking about how everything moved into that really large movement. Now, this, in my opinion, was likely a kind of like a similar scenario as a BLM movement in 2020. This was like the 2024 version. But this goes to show that within our own country, there's a large group of people who honestly believe that everything we do here is wrong and incorrect, and that we should be following a different path, let's just say. But this is a reminder that this occurred and that these people are still here in the country in this disruption, and their level of angst against what we have here is still there as well, okay? So, Columbia University announced on Monday that it has canceled its university-wide commencement ceremony because of disruptions caused by recent pro-Palestinian protests. Students will still be able to celebrate at a series of smaller school-based graduation ceremonies this week and next. The protest movement connected to the Israel-Hamas war began nearly 3 weeks ago at the Ivy League University in New York City. It has since swept college campuses nationwide, with more than 2,500 people arrested. The university's large graduation ceremony was scheduled for May 15th on the college's main lawn, where there is a protest encampment, and was based there until authorities dismantled it last week. University officials said the past few weeks have been incredibly difficult for the community and that they decided to cancel the ceremony after discussing it with students. A timeline illustrating how Columbia University became the driving force behind protests on college campuses across the country. Starting on April 17th is when that encampment was set up. Now, we could go through this whole thing, but I don't think that's necessary. But it is a reminder that this movement was throughout this year, and it kind of lost traction in the sense of getting, press coverage and everything else. But in reality, it is something that you should take seriously, because one thing I want to go ahead and touch base on here really quick. Let's see here if I can go ahead and pull this up really fast. I'm not very good at my job sometimes, so please bear with me, as I'm not a technological genius, unfortunately. But I am a guy who knows how to click with a mouse sometimes. And I want to pull something up for everybody that's from my channel to remind you. Now, here's the craziest part about this. this video doesn't show up when I search for it on my own channel, which makes me feel like there's some reason for why it doesn't show up. I can't even search it on my own channel. In fact, here, I'm just going to demonstrate that really quickly. Because you know what? It also is, holiday season. We're going into a new year, and we can have a good time tonight. It doesn't have to be super professionally structured, but I do want to show you this, okay? So here's my channel. I'm on my videos page, right? I'm go over here, videos. We can see all the videos, right? I'm going to search manual. How about that, okay? Manual. Where is, nope, nothing I'm seeing that I need to show you here. Let's go ahead and search underground, I believe is one of the other words in that title, which I hate when I hate when that does that. Anyway, underground. Well, remember when I buried that gun? So, no, not showing up here. Okay, well, let's go to videos and let's scroll down and just kind of keep going, right? We need to go about, 8 months back. Oh, here we go. The underground training manual they don't want you to see. A video I put out 8 months ago, specifically about the Palestine Action Underground Manual, which, if you haven't seen that video, I highly recommend you check it out. And in fact, I will go ahead and link it right here for you. So that way you can check it out, because clearly it's hard to find. And that's a problem for me because, I made the video, first off. And second off, it shows you that there's a underground training manual that they were distributing to those college campus protesters regarding, how to be more than just a political activist, let's just say. And a political activist who might use something like terror to force their beliefs upon others. So, I can't explain to you why the words underground and manual are in the title of that video. And when I search for it on my own channel, it doesn't show up. But I have feelings as to why that might happen. And so, please, Yardbirds, you're already on a list. Don't worry. We all know it. Brett Hevlin, what is the best suppressor? I can't answer that question for you because I don't have enough experience. But what I can do is suggest you go to Brass Facts channel, where he has a lot of different comparison videos regarding suppressors, and you might learn quite a bit from that. So make sure you check out Brass Facts. I like him. He's a cool guy, and he has a good channel. Okay? Now, here's what I wanted to say. That movement was full of red flags, and it's still around. So be aware, that's my top 2 or number 2 on this list. I don't know how to talk, but we're just going to do it anyway. And that is something that I think was very impactful around the country during that time, and something that you might have forgot about, or at least kind of moved on from. But that element still exists here in the country, okay? Shabui99 just got notification. Hooray. Who says that? I can't say hooray. What's wrong with me? Anyway, I'm glad you made it. So thank you for also making me do that on live TV. Now, let's go ahead and move on to the next top SHTF event of 2024. Now, this is something that most people didn't pay attention to and most people didn't see or hear about. And it's something that I made an entire video about because I found it to be interesting. And I wanted to share it with everybody because, just so you're aware, this whole situation still has not been resolved. What do I mean by that? I mean that the FBI still has never arrested anybody regarding this power station attack that occurred in Torrance, California. Now, here's why I'm putting this on the top 10 list, okay? First off, we know how fragile our infrastructure is. We also know that there are foreign adversaries that are aware of the fact that if they take down a certain number of power stations, they can take down the entire grid. And we also know that they've been probing with a lot of different functions regarding how to destroy our electrical grid. And one of those probing techniques is to just go in and physically decapacitate it. Yeah, that sounds right. Not decapitate. That would be a whole different thing. Either way, this whole situation did not get hardly any press coverage. This actually occurred in August of 2023, but we weren't told about it until April of 2024, which is why I still put it on this list. But here's the thing. There's a $25,000 reward for somebody that they have photo evidence of doing this. They still haven't found this person. They've never resolved this case. And it just goes to show you how vulnerable our electrical grid really is. Our power stations could be taken out by anybody at any time with rudimentary tools, and no one will ever get caught or be brought to justice for it unless they get caught red-handed. So, Just a reminder, this happened, okay? April 2nd, 2024. FBI offers $25,000 reward, seeks information to identify party responsible for attack at electrical substation in Torrance. The FBI is offering a reward for information leading to the identification, arrest, and conviction of the person or group responsible for an attack on an electrical substation in Torrance, California in 2023. Okay, on August 20th, 2023, an unknown suspect or group attempted to destroy and cause a system failure of a Southern California Edison electrical substation by shooting one of the transformers and turning off various circuit breakers. The Southern California Edison substation is located at 21760 Madrona Avenue in Torrance, California. No one was injured during the incident, but property was significantly damaged. An individual suspected of being involved was described as male and wearing a tan overcoat with a hood, black pants, and boots. Photographs of this individual obtained from nearby surveillance cameras are being made available to the public. Like I said, this person that you see right here in this photo was never found, okay? And it's just a reminder, that's how vulnerable our grid really is. And so, sure, did that event happen in 2023? Yes. But the public wasn't made aware of it until 2024 when a $25,000 offer was being put out there for any information regarding the arrest of said individual. That still has not taken place. So please be aware of that. At any moment in time, they can take it down, right? And they found that out by pulling an attack off like that and many others throughout the years that have never been solved. So let's move on to number 4 on this list of the top 10 SHTF events of 2024. And really quick, I want to see, the Watchman says there's a polar plunge coming. Certainly is. I should have negative temperatures here by tomorrow, so that should be great. It's actually snowing right now as well. Let's see here. We have, if I am not live, then I have been denied critical need to know information, says Minuteman69. Fair enough. And then I just started my own channel. Any advice? Says Tommy's Path. Yeah, take your time and just make a crazy amount of videos before you get too worked up about the performance of everything. Because honestly, you have to, what the advice I was given, and that I think is relatively true, is make 100 videos and then start making more videos, right? So, and what that means is, be patient and don't expect overnight success and don't let failures beat you down. You just have to figure out why things didn't work or why things didn't resonate and then learn from it and then move on. Don't take it so personally and make videos for the people who want to watch them, not for yourself. And that's always going to help you a lot more because that's the whole goal is you're probably on here to try to help other people or get out information or whatever it may be. And you don't want to tell everyone about, how your pet guinea pig had a birthday, right? So that's just that's just the truth. I'm sorry, but it is what it is, right? Now, let's go ahead and talk about someone says it looks like Luigi again, Romans 12:18. You know what? That maybe, we don't know. Now, number 4 on this list. We're at number 4, right? I think so. So, back in May, right? So we're right in that same time zone. A lot happened during the spring of 2024. Back in May, Russia was getting really mad about a lot of things. So what they decided to do was begin doing some very questionable drills that really moved things forward in this entire global conflict scenario, right? Not only did they begin tactical nuclear weapon drills, but they also started talking about targeting the UK based on their role in supplying Ukraine with weapons. So this was a significant escalation in the war. This was when the talk of using tactical nuclear weapons on the battlefield really started to gain ground. This is when things really started to move forward and accelerate regarding the use of nuclear weapons in this war, which we all know can really move things into a bad place very quickly. So Russia warns Britain and plans nuclear drills over the West's possible deepening role in Ukraine. Updated May 6th, 2024. Russia on Monday threatened to strike British military facilities and said it would hold drills simulating the use of battlefield nuclear weapons amid sharply rising tensions over comments by senior Western officials about possibly deeper involvement in the war in Ukraine. Now remember, this is all before we started allowing Ukraine to strike inside of Russia with Western weaponry. This is also before Ukraine invaded Kursk, right? So this is all before any of that, which is why I'm sometimes highly surprised about the fact that worse things haven't happened yet, because there's been so many red lines crossed and red flags and everything else, and we're still here talking about what if they do this, right? So like, this is just a reminder of how things have moved since even these times and how much further they've gone and how we should be very grateful and I guess feeling lucky that a nuclear weapon still has not been used to this day. Now, I know a lot of people are talking about the possibility of a nuclear weapon being used in a strike in the city of Tartus on a munitions factory, I believe, by Israel. I don't know. I can't verify any of that, and I have doubts, but that is something that's being talked about. So it's possible that we might find out later on that there might have been the use of a tactical nuclear weapon that we just didn't know about until later. So like all these things are still possible, but this is what was happening in May of this year, okay? After summoning the British ambassador to the foreign ministry, Moscow warned that Ukrainian strikes on Russian territory with UK-supplied weapons could bring retaliatory strikes on British military facilities and equipment on Ukrainian soil or elsewhere. The remarks came on the eve of the Russian President Vladimir Putin's inauguration to a fifth term in office, and in a week when Moscow on Thursday will celebrate Victory Day, right? The drills are a response to the provocative statements and threats of certain Western officials regarding the Russian Federation, the Defense Ministry said in a statement. Now, this is all before all this other stuff happened, right? Like this is way before ATACMS missiles and everything else. And so just please keep all this in mind. Like this was very significant. Them talking about drills involving tactical nuclear weapons, this was the first time that's ever happened. It was the first time Russia has publicly announced drills involving tactical nuclear weapons, although its strategic nuclear forces regularly hold exercises. Tactical nuclear weapons include air bombs, warheads for short-range missiles, and artillery munitions, and are meant for use on a battlefield. They are less powerful than the strategic weapons, massive warheads that arm intercontinental ballistic missiles, and are intended to obliterate entire cities. UN spokesman Stephanie Dujarric expressed concern that various parties have been talking about issues regarding nuclear weapons more and more recently, right? So, that was back in May. So much has happened since then, and we still haven't seen any of that happen. So, I mean, count your blessings. In my opinion, I feel like we're in a good spot considering like how far we've come without any of that actually occurring. But it could just be a matter of time. Right? And that's why we're going back tonight to look at these, right? I know this isn't what everybody wants, right? Like usually on a live stream like this, everyone wants new current events that are happening right now, especially a large portion of the community that seems to be kind of like stuck on like the outrage or the, I'm just going to say it's almost like doomer slop, right? So because that's kind of what it's like. But in reality, like every day you can get on here and just watch videos about like, oh, there's a bird flu outbreak in a farm in a small town with a population of 17, but be careful, right? And then you can go ahead and change your video over to another one that's like, oh, a plane hit a bird hit an airplane engine and the airplane engine had an emergency landing. Watch out, right? And like, yeah, okay, some of those things might be worth at least monitoring, but like to go through like multiple things per day that are only affecting an extremely small amount of people, at least currently, and doing it over and over again every single day with multiple releases of the same type of information isn't necessarily helping you move forward. But what we can do right now is go back and look at how things have evolved over time and then apply it to what we're looking at here moving into the future. And that's going to make some significant differences. So look, I know that, a current events type live stream is usually what we do here, and I usually prefer to do that. But I feel like at the end of this year, being such a tumultuous year, it was worth going back to try to see what actually happened and talk about some of those events and then remind ourselves like, hey, like moving into next year, I really need to keep getting ready and preparing because it's actually crazy how far things have come, but it's easy to write it off when you don't think about it anymore, right? So, let's see here. Robert Larson, but you knew that. I don't know what we're referring to, but I appreciate you. All right, so what is the number 5 SHTF event that happened in 2024? And this is my opinion, but I believe it was North Korea joining the Ukraine-Russian war. Now, North Korea and Russia signed a defense pact back in June of 2024. So North Korean soldiers weren't on the battlefield yet, but this is when all of that began. And back then I made a video about it, and a lot of people were like, what's your proof? Are there any actual North Koreans there? Like, how do you know this is going to happen? Like, oh, they're talking about it, but there's no guarantees, right? There's a lot of people trying to naysay the information as if like it wasn't reasonable to believe that this could happen, right? But in reality, we now know that there are North Koreans on the battlefield in the Kursk region of Russia right now engaging Ukrainian soldiers and having casualties occur. Like, this is happening right now. But back then, everyone was still saying, like, I doubt it. This isn't real. What's North Korea going to do? They can't even support their economy, right? All those types of naysayer comments were coming through. But in reality, now we know what has actually occurred, right? So, like, this, like going back through this really helps out sometimes to say, yeah, no, things have like progressed. They have not improved. And so where are we heading, right? South Korea will consider supplying arms to Ukraine after Russia and North Korea signed strategic pact. This is from June 20th, 2024 from the AP. Seoul, South Korea. South Korea said Thursday it would consider sending arms to Ukraine, a major policy change that was suggested after Russia and North Korea rattled the region and beyond by signing a pact to come to each other's defense in the event of war. The comments from a senior presidential official came hours after North Korea's state media released the details of the agreement, which observers said could mark the strongest connection between Moscow and Pyongyang since the end of the Cold War. It comes at a time when Russia faces growing isolation over the war in Ukraine, and both countries face escalating standoffs with the West. According to the text of the deal published by North Korea's official Korean Central News Agency, or KCNA, if either country gets invaded and is pushed into a state of war, the other must deploy all means at its disposal without delay to provide military and other assistance. But the agreement also says that such actions must be in accordance with the laws of both countries and Article 51 of the United Nations Charter, which recognizes a UN member state's right to self-defense. Now, why is that so interesting now? Because this is before the Kursk invasion, when Ukraine actually crossed Russia's border and invaded the Kursk region. So, this defense pact was signed, and then, like a month and a half later, Ukraine invaded Russia, which means North Korea signed a pact that said they would come to Russia's defense if either country gets invaded and is pushed into a state of war. So, now we have North Koreans on the battlefield in Russia. And it also makes you wonder, was the Kursk invasion allowed to happen in order to enact the part of the pact that forced North Korea to send troops to Russia? Maybe. Did Ukraine do that on purpose in order to get North Korea involved, to try to drum up additional Western support now that North Korea is also fighting them on the battlefield? Possibly. But at the time that this was occurring, everybody just looked at it and said, no big deal, nothing to see here. We'll never see North Korean soldiers on the battlefield in Ukraine or Russia. And here we are, seeing them actually have casualties, right? So, that's why that was number 5 on this list. It is a major event. It turned the Russian-Ukraine war into the Russian-North Korea-Ukraine war, which obviously is dragging South Korea into the mix as well. And it just keeps expanding, right? So, that's why it's number 5. Mike H., thank you so much for the super chat. You're good, Magic. This is appreciated. I consider it ancillary to Zero Hedge's list of top 10 fake news of 2024. Well, I appreciate that. I'm sure that's a good read. I might have to check that out later. So, let's see here. Bob Hunter, kindness costs nothing. I agree, and I think that we should all be more kind to everybody. I try my best to be a very nice person, and generally, if you were to meet me in person, you'll find that I am kind. However, you have to have somewhat of a mean bone in your body if you want to be able to get through any strife, or if you want to be successful to a degree. Because unfortunately, if you're only ever nice, it's hard to get places sometimes. And that's an unfortunate truth of life, right? But in general, I agree that you should just be kind whenever possible, because it is something that more people need to experience. So, 30 seconds out, nothing to see here, just move on, right? Yeah, these aren't the droids you're looking for, so don't worry about it. Now, what else happened? Number 6, SHTF event of 2024. That's in the top 10, because I can't figure out how I want to say that every time, apparently. But this was a pretty big event. I think everyone can agree on this one, that it could have had major consequences, and it definitely changed the trajectory of probably a lot of things, okay? But this was the attempted assassination of Donald Trump. Obviously, 2024 was an election year, and obviously tensions were very high and things were very sketchy when it came to the safety of certain political candidates. And on July 13th in Butler, Pennsylvania, one of those candidates survived an assassination attempt, and that was Donald J. Trump. Trump safe after shooting at campaign rally in Butler. One spectator and suspected gunman killed. The incident is being investigated as an assassination attempt. This was quite the scenario that occurred. And I mean, here's the thing. It changed public perception of a lot of things. It changed public discourse immediately. But it also could have had catastrophic consequences had this gunman succeeded. And the way that he missed by grazing Trump's ear was what a lot of people consider to be miraculous, because, I mean, it's just insane that he wasn't successful. Most people at the range he was at with a red dot sight or an EOTech of some kind, right? I believe it was actually a Holosun, could make that shot. So this just didn't happen for reasons, I guess. But remember, this was a huge event. Former President Donald Trump was injured at a campaign rally in Butler on Saturday in what law enforcement officials called an assassination attempt. A rally goer and the gunman were killed, authorities said, and 2 other people at the rally were critically injured in the incident, according to the U.S. Secret Service. Authorities said at a press conference late Saturday that there was no reason to believe there was any other existing threat, but said the site of the shooting remained an active crime scene. They did not identify the shooter except to say he was male, and did not identify the victims. Anyone who attended the rally or has information is asked to call 1-800-CALL-FBI or go to fbi.gov/Butler. The shooting began shortly after Trump took the stage at about 6 p.m. when several loud pops could be heard and Secret Service agents whisked him off stage, blood visible on his face. Trump briefly pumped his fist at the crowd before he left the stage. Now, this was a major event, and the other thing to remember is that Donald Trump was already a president of the United States. So a former president almost got assassinated, not to mention a political candidate, right? So this was a very big event. And just to follow it up, don't forget that shortly thereafter, there was a second attempt on his life. Trump safe after suspect in apparent assassination attempt is arrested. Officials say he had a semi-automatic rifle, scope, and GoPro. And this happened in West Palm Beach, Florida at Trump's golf course. And obviously we know it was Ryan Routh who did that. It was Thomas Matthew Crooks who was the other shooter. And a lot of weird things happened during this event. There was a lot of investigations that led to some very interesting things. And some of the big things that were takeaways from both of those events was that, first off, our Secret Service is either very incompetent or purposely incompetent, and at the same time, that our political candidates aren't as safe as maybe you would have thought. And that if one of our foreign adversaries wanted to remove somebody from the equation, it would be a lot easier to pull off than you would have assumed previously. So this actually forced a lot of important conversations to be had. It actually forced a lot of, let's just say, resignations when it came to the Secret Service, as well as reevaluations as to how we protect presidents, former presidents, and front-running political candidates. But it also opened up the doors of opportunity to some people regarding whether or not they could be successful. So everything has been ramped up security-wise now, and things have definitely changed quite a bit since that particular moment. So I just found that to be a huge event in 2024 that required us to revisit. A lot of things happened there. There was a lot of concern from Americans at that point in time that our government became so corrupt and so agenda-driven ideologically that they were willing to put the life of a leading political candidate at risk on purpose, quite possibly, right? So, it's just something that occurred, right? All right, Yo MP, what do you think about the drones? RG Paradise, or RJ, because that's a real word too, Paradise. So, the drones are a big deal, but they're not in the top 10 tonight, because I think there were some other things that were more imperative. And I'm still waiting to find out more about the drone situation, so I can't say for sure what's exactly happening. But I do believe that the public hysteria around the drones fueled a lot of the drone stuff in general. So we'll see how it pans out. But currently, I'm not overly concerned about it, but I am just keeping an eye on it just in case. And let's see here. Robert Larson, sloped roof jokes make the top 10, MP? They should. They should, because you know what? I've been on a sloped roof from time to time. My shingles like to take off every so often, and apparently it's not that big of a deal, at least for me. But what do I know? And you know what? I also know that Koreans tend to be really effective on roofs. So what's wrong with our people? Maybe we're just hiring the wrong ones. I don't know. Let's move on. Okay, number 6. Or no, that was number 6. So we're at number 7 now. Top 10, number 7 event, SHTF event of 2024, because I'm going to say it different every single time, okay? I put it as the Tren de Aragua apartment complex takeover in Aurora, Colorado. Now, why is that? Because this was the first public display of foreign immigrants that weren't supposed to be here building organized criminal organizations and enforcing their power upon the people of the United States, right? And leveraging their manpower against the citizens here and using force to ensure compliance. And this was definitely something that I think is very important to pay attention to, because this was the start of us really starting to understand just how dangerous our lack of security at the southern border had become, and just how dangerous some of these organizations are and what they're capable of, even in the United States, in, you know, modern large cities like Aurora, Colorado, right? So this started a lot of other conversations, investigations, and concern from Americans around the country. And now we know Tren de Aragua, or they're in New York City, they're in Tennessee, they're all over the country. And they've even been arrested for doing things like kidnapping and torture and all kinds of stuff at this point in time. But back then, the big takeaway here was that the police and the city at the time were denying that this was even happening, right? They were denying that this was actually an issue. People on the ground were saying, look, this is a real problem. We had videos coming out on TikTok. We had videos coming out on all other platforms of Tren de Aragua, you know, causing chaos in Target parking lots and all kinds of stuff. And we were being told by the officials at the time that it wasn't real and that it wasn't a real threat and wasn't a concern. So that is a huge takeaway about this, because they weren't willing to be honest and upfront with the American people because they were worried about their own failures being put on public display. And in the meantime, it made the situation more dangerous and allowed this gang to take more of a foothold and cause more crime in the meantime. And like I said, from this time to now, we've seen them get arrested in multiples of 10s and 20s. They've been running, you know, car theft rings. They've been running kidnapping rings. They're running smuggling rings. Like, it's all over the place now. But at the time, we were lied to profusely. Police deny Venezuela gang has taken over rundown apartment complex in Denver suburb. This was from September 5th, 2024. Okay, so we're getting through the year. We're in fall now. Okay, police in the Denver suburb of Aurora say a Venezuela street gang with a small presence in the city has not taken over a rundown apartment complex. Yet the allegation continues to gain steam among conservatives and was amplified by former President Donald Trump in a Wednesday Fox News town hall, where he said Venezuelans were taking over the whole town. The unsubstantiated allegation gained momentum following last month's dissemination of a video from a resident in the complex that showed armed men knocking on an apartment door, intensifying fears that the Tren de Aragua gang was in control of the 6-building complex. However, city officials indicate the buildings, along with the 2 other apartment complexes, were run down because of neglect by the property manager, CBZ Management. Now, multiple people in that video where they were knocking on an apartment door have been arrested now at this point in time, including one of them for being involved with that kidnapping and torture I just told you about. So at the time, we were lied to. At the time, they were trying to hide their own problems and their own mistakes as the authorities of the city. And now we know that, yes, this is a real problem. And yes, they have taken over hotels in Texas. They have taken over buildings in other states. Like, they are everywhere. So this is becoming huge. And we have a very big problem when it comes to organized crime from Latin America infiltrating our country. And this was really what started driving that concern into the hearts of the American people. We started looking at this and saying, this isn't right. What's wrong here? How can we allow them to just do these things? And luckily that public outcry might have had an effect, but it might be too little too late in all honesty. So just a reminder, that happened, and that was huge, and it was the start of a lot of other things that needed to happen, especially regarding conversations about whether or not we were capable of taking care of ourselves. Now, let's see here. Yo, I caught a live stream. Void Uric. Yes, you did. I appreciate you being here, and thanks for hanging out, and thanks for the kind words about the channel, too. I do the best I can. I'm just trying my best to motivate preparedness, give people good information when I can, and just share ideas, I guess. So that's what we do here. Now, Bob Hunter says, I love America. And you know what? I love America too. And then Silent Guard says, I love America, but I hate the government. And I think a lot of us can feel agreeance in that as well. So, now, so you guys know, and I'm going to throw this out here as just a slight heads up about a future conversation we're going to be having here on this channel. But a tidbit for you to consider, okay? And this is something that was brought to me by a good friend of mine who is a very like-minded individual who has Americans' best interests at heart. Okay? At heart, I think. I can't talk today. It's fine. Think about this, and I want you to consider this, and this will be in a video here in the future, but now you'll have a little bit of a heads up, and you'll kind of like have some time to digest it before that eventually comes out, right? When the Constitution was written and when it was accepted as the law of the land here in the United States, there was no electricity, right? So we didn't need phones, and we didn't need the internet, and we didn't need any of our modern gadgetry to tell us that that was the law of the land and that we needed to abide by it and that we need to live within the confines of said Constitution. And now a lot of people feel like, if the power goes down, like, what will happen? Like, well, I don't know. Ask the guys from the 1700s who didn't really care whether or not there was power to maintain a level of constitutionality moving forward, right? So keep that in mind. Just a reminder that, like if we stick to what that whole genius concept was built off of, and we maintain it, even if there isn't a phone or internet to access, then things should go well. So, Mike H. says, honorable mention, Peanut the Squirrel as a government overreach example. I agree with you there, Mike. That was an extreme example of government overreach, and honestly, the government should have just effed off completely in that situation. Not to mention, I think the owners should have just let Peanut outside and been like, oh no, he ran off, right? And oh well. But I know they couldn't probably deal with what was happening right then, and it wasn't really their choice to do. So, but regardless, yeah, that was whack, okay? Let's go ahead and move to number 8. Number 8 on top SHTF events of 2024. I think we can all agree on this, okay? All of it. I think this was probably, at least in my opinion, maybe the most important and most hard lesson learned of 2024. And I think that it was the most impactful in the preparedness community as well as on the country as a whole. And it has changed the conversation and the narrative to a degree that I didn't know was possible, in all honesty. So number 8, in my opinion, was the Hurricane Helene disaster. It, first off, isn't over yet. I know it's hard to kind of keep track of everything, but the people who suffered through Hurricane Helene are still suffering to this day, are still trying to figure out housing, are still trying to figure out how to get their property back, are still fighting the local government now about whether or not they can even move back to their own property, or whether or not they can get back into their home, or whether or not they can have a tiny home versus a tent, or a million other things. This whole situation woke a lot of people up to the idea that the government is not going to help you in an emergency, and sometimes they'll even be the biggest problem you run into. Not to mention, this situation, as awful as it was and as devastating as it was, showed us something very important. We, the civilians of this country, the citizens of this country, are the best chance of an emergency response. And if we come together as a community and help each other and actually try to support those in need at that time of grave, problems, that we can get through it and that we can actually come together and make it work without the government, without their help, without their direction, without anything regarding them. It really can just be us. And even if SHTF happens to like the nth degree, SHTF in the sense of like global nuclear war or an asteroid strike or who knows what, right? The worst case scenario happens. If we just come together, we can make it work. We can rebuild, we can make it happen, and we can get things done. And we do not need the federal government to help us out. We really don't. Like, this has shown a lot of people a lot of things that they just did not understand before. And this is an awful event that hurt a lot of people and left a lot of people in a very bad situation. But it was something that taught a lot of people around the country a lot about the government, its role in helping its own people, what it's willing to do compared to what it's willing to do for other countries across the ocean, right? And how much we can do on our own. We, as people, when it came to donations, when it came to boots on the ground, when it came to every level of support that was provided, we, as a country, really came together over this. And I find that to be humbling and actually, a generation of hope. Because now I have hope that if something like this massively bad happens anywhere else, we can figure it out. And that's huge, right? It gives me more reasons to prepare so that either I don't need help, which is great because that means someone can help someone else, or I can help someone else because I'm squared away, right? Like, there's so much to this that we learned. This is, hands down, the Hurricane Helene disaster was the most impactful event of 2024 when it came to SHTF preparedness. Like, I just don't even know how else to explain it. So, just a reminder, okay? In the wake of Hurricane Helene, questions about government response emerge. In western North Carolina, where more than 40 people have died, some residents say the government was unprepared for the storm. And this is from September 30th, okay? Long lines for gas, shelters at capacity, more than 300 road closings, a severely damaged water system that could take weeks to repair. Hundreds of miles from where it made landfall in Florida's Big Bend, Hurricane Helene caused unprecedented damage in western North Carolina, where at least 49 people have died and dozens of others are missing. The devastation was beyond belief, North Carolina Governor Roy Cooper said at a news conference Monday afternoon. And even when you prepare for something like this is something that's never happened before in western North Carolina. The Federal Emergency Management Agency reported Monday that it had delivered about 1 million liters of water and more than 600,000 meals to North Carolina. More than 5,000 households have contacted FEMA to apply for assistance by phone and online. Let's not forget that what they were offering people at the time was $750, which is not enough to do anything for people who just lost everything. Okay? FEMA Administrator Deanne Criswell, who joined Cooper in Asheville on Monday, said that more than 1,200 federal workers are now on the ground. Okay? But some residents have criticized what they view as a lack of preparation for the catastrophic storm. Devonna Brown, an Asheville business owner, said she felt the city failed its residents. They should have been more prepared. They knew that the storm was coming, she said. We were very frustrated by it. I mean, there's no way to get in, no way to get out. Sarah Lagatsky, another Asheville business owner, said officials should have expressed more urgency and brought in emergency water supplies earlier. There should have been a more urgent call for people to be prepared, she said. Were they stationing water off the mountain ready to be trucked up here, knowing how fragile our water system is? None of this is a surprise. Anyone acting like this is a surprise has not been here long enough and is not from the mountains and does not understand how water works. Okay? So, I don't think we have to rehash all of this. But what I'm trying to remind you of was the lack of government response, their inadequacies when it came to helping the people of North Carolina as well as Tennessee, and not to mention Florida, which went through 2 major hurricanes this year. But at the same time, we learned a lot about ourselves. We learned a lot about preparedness. We learned a lot about what we're capable of as a community. And unfortunately, we learned where our government's priorities lie. Because while they're handing out $750 to residents of North Carolina who lost everything, we were also sending billions of dollars in additional aid to Ukraine, which a lot of people criticized because of the discrepancy, right? So that, to me, hands down, the most impactful event of 2024 here in the United States. And there was a lot to learn from it. And to me, and this is just my opinion, everybody, but Hurricane Helene, for me personally, showed me my inadequacies as well. And when I say that, what I mean is, not having enough money in the bank to just send a boatload of cash to help people in need that needed it at the time, right? Especially regarding certain organizations like Grindstone Ministries, for example, who was doing really good work on the ground there and trying their best to get people back on their feet after losing everything. And obviously, that's the charity that is ran by Bear Independent. I'll put them in the live chat right now because I just want to remind everybody about what they do and how important they are for actually getting people out there and helping. But I was inadequate. Like, I didn't have the money or the resources to like really make a huge impact personally. I also didn't have the ability to deploy personally based on my current personal situation regarding like, vehicles, logistics of like childcare, all kinds of stuff, right? So like, between the way like everything's worked out for me right now and everything else, like decisions were made to try to eliminate additional debt that we were trying to get rid of. Decisions were made in order to invest our money into other projects so that we can try to, get further ahead. But because of making those decisions, I was more inadequate than I wanted to be during that disaster period of time. So I learned a lot about myself. I learned a lot about our government, and I learned a lot about what we can do. And that's why I'm so like passionate about this particular event, because I think it showed a lot of us what we need, right? So can't forget $10,000 a car, home, food stamps, and etc. for illegals. Yeah, 100%, and that's just true. And I don't know what to say. Like, it's true. People in New York City are getting 5-star hotel rooms for free with paid meals and a debit card with like $2,000 on it cash, just because they're here illegally. But then people in Western North Carolina as well as Eastern Tennessee, like, can't even go back to their homes just because the local government says so, right? Like, it's out of control. It's out of control. Shabui, I appreciate that. I'm trying my best here. Manda Williams, hey, made it to a live, late, but I made it. You know what? You're late, but you made it. That's all that matters, and we're glad you're here, and thanks for checking in. I appreciate it. Kevin Brown, I didn't vote for Zelensky. Why does he get my money? Well, there's a lot of things I didn't vote for that my money goes to. So I think that's a bigger question than even that, but I understand what you're saying, Kevin, and I appreciate you being here as always. So now, let's go ahead and talk about, well, number 9 on the list, okay? Number 9, say what you will about it. Had a little tickle in my throat there. Say what you will about it. But this was a huge event, and a huge event that had the capacity to make a big SHTF event in its wake. It didn't, but it's still a major event because it can change the course of the entire country as well as the world. And what do I mean by that? I mean, when Donald Trump won the 2024 election, okay? This is a huge event in 2024. I don't care how you feel about the politics. I don't care about your ideology or which way you vote or anything like that. As someone who wants to be prepared, which I assume you are since you're here, you have to admit this was a major event in 2024 that has implications of SHTF. Whether or not that's going to be contention during January 20th and the inauguration or everything else there, or January 6th when they go to certified votes, right? Or if it has things to do with how our foreign adversaries are going to react or how they're going to negotiate or whatever it might be, a lot of crazy stuff can happen whichever way this election went, right? If Kamala Harris won, how many people in this country would have felt like it was stolen again? And who knows what the reaction would have been? And like, there's just a million ways this thing could have gone. But Donald Trump winning the 2024 election was huge. It was huge, and it is something that is a major SHTF event because it could still spawn some serious situations based on the fact that there are a lot of people out there who are very upset about it, right? The other thing to keep in mind is that this whole election was very just rough. I mean, we had the assassination attempts. We had all of the back and forth and the vitriol and everything else related to it, right? The other thing to keep in mind is that, well, we still might not be out of the woods. And when I say that, what I mean is until January 20th, we don't know what might happen. So please keep your eyes peeled. Please understand that the presidential election was a major event, and I'm calling it an SHTF event because it could have done a lot of things, and it still might, and it's something you need to be aware of, but it also was just a major event in the sense of the trajectory of this country. And for a prepared person, which from my personal standpoint, right? Like this works out better for me because I'm hoping for an improved economy. I'm hoping for better firearms rights or at least less attacks on them. I'm hoping for better relations with certain foreign adversaries to hopefully calm some of the things down that are happening in the world right now. But you know what? I might be wrong about all of it. And I could end up in 2028 going, well, that sucked really bad. But this still seemed like the better option for me, hands down. If it wasn't for you, I understand. I'm just hoping that things improve. We will see. I do not know if they will or not. But presidential election of 2024 was huge, and I consider it a major event, and I think everyone else should too, because presidents do make a difference as to the way things are handled. And regardless of how you feel about like, oh, it's the two birds of the same feather or whatever else you want to call it, right? Well, I don't know about you, but this Biden presidency has been pretty awful across the board. So we'll see, I guess, right? Now, let's see here. Mike H. with the $20 Orange Crush. It was quite a crush. It really was. So, pray unceasingly, Patriots. Good night, all. Magic Pepper brings the goods. Well, hey, Robert Larson, thank you for being here. I appreciate you, and thanks for the kind words as well. Now, number 10. What was the number 10 SHTF event of 2024 that made the top 10 list, right? And I hope that you found this information useful. I really do. And I want to reiterate again. If you want videos like this to get out there and spread some good information, you got to hit the thumbs up. You got to hit the subscribe button, and you got to hit the share button and send it to somebody because, well, it's not going to get out there organically, I don't believe. So be aware of that. But number 10, and this is just my opinion, like I said at the beginning, but this was a major escalation. And what that was, and this was recent, was Biden authorizing Ukraine to use long-range U.S. weapons in Russia. This moved the goalpost quite a bit in escalating this global conflict we're all currently living through. And I personally found this to be a huge event. And I'll give you an actual piece of evidence as to why here in just a second. But first, let's talk about this because this happened right after Donald Trump won the election. So you have a lame duck president who said, hey, Russia said this is like a no-no, and everyone has said collectively throughout the West, the UK, France, everybody for a long time has said, we're not going to do this, we're not going to do this. And then the second Donald Trump won the presidency, they were like, we're going to do this. So to me, this is a purposeful escalation to try to sabotage whatever ability we have to resolve this thing moving forward. But who knows? That's just me speculating. But this is huge because we are currently having U.S.-made weaponry used inside of Russia to strike targets in Russia. And it's just, there's already been a response. And that's why I said I had evidence that this was an escalatory move because we immediately escalated things, all right? So this is from November 18th. Like I said, right after the election, not long after, they said, all right, fine, let's go. President Joe Biden has authorized Ukraine to use powerful long-range American weapons inside Russia, according to two U.S. officials familiar with the decision as North Korean troops deploy in support of Moscow's effort. Oh, wow. Remember that thing that everyone said would never happen in June, and in November, suddenly they're literally saying it's happening? The decision comes as Moscow has deployed nearly 50,000 troops to Kursk, the southern Russian region where Kiev launched its surprise counteroffensive in the summer to prepare to take back territory. The weapons are intended to be used primarily in Kursk for now, a U.S. official said. With its huge troop amassment there, Russia is trying to take Kursk off the table as a potential bargaining chip for the Ukrainians in any future peace talks, something that the U.S. does not want to see. The idea is to help Ukraine hold on to Kursk for as long as possible, the officials said. Yep. The decision to allow the use of the Army Tactical Missile Systems, or ATACMS, inside of Russia had been under consideration for months. American officials have been divided on the wisdom of allowing the new capability. Some had concerns about escalating the war, while others worried about dwindling stockpiles of the weapons. The U.S. refused to even provide ATACMS to Ukraine for the first 2 years of the war, in part because of readiness concerns as the powerful missiles require time and complex components to produce. But Biden secretly approved the transfer of the long-range ATACMS missiles in February for use inside Ukrainian territory, and the U.S. delivered the missiles in April. Right? So, This was a major escalation to say, okay, go ahead and start shooting them in Russia. And this is after Putin had said multiple times, if you use, US or UK made weapons inside of Russia, we will consider that an act of war. And now your targets are legitimate military targets, right? What happened right after that? What happened right after that? Right after that, we got a display of the Oreshnik missile, okay? This is from, November 30th, right? And this attack happened on November 21st. The report I just read you was from November 18th. So 3 days after Biden publicly declared that the Ukrainians could use ATACMS missiles inside of Russia, Russia used their hypersonic missile on Ukraine. That's how you know this was an extremely escalatory move and how things moved into a very dangerous area right thereafter, okay? Russia fired an Oreshnik intermediate-range ballistic missile that hit a factory in Dnipro, a town in eastern Ukraine, on November 21st. Photos and videos document the damage caused by the missile. While the Kremlin claimed the missile is new and experimental, the Pentagon and other experts said that the missile could be a variation on existing ballistic missiles. And just as a reminder, because this was a very impressive, albeit scary display of missiles, just here's a quick visual for you. That this is what was happening in Dnipro when that missile was fired, okay? This is not something that we've seen before used on a modern battlefield. So, that is why that was number 10. It clearly escalated the war into a dangerous territory where the use of intermediate range continental ballistic missiles is now on the table. And, yeah, I don't think it's a good place for us to be, but that's where we are. And unfortunately, this administration has until January 20th to make it worse. So, that was my top 10 SHTF events of 2024. I know that I missed some things because there was a lot of things I could have put on that list. But these were the ones that I thought were extremely impactful, that directly affected Americans in many ways, and have the capacity to move things into an even more dangerous territory in 2025. And I wanted to review them because some of them are basically, out of sight, out of mind at this point in time. And if we don't go back and remind ourselves as to like where the threat level is and how all these other existential threats still exist, then we might forget about them and get caught off guard when they reappear. So, you all are amazing. I appreciate you all. This was another excellent year of Monday Night Live streams, which we used to affectionately call Marauder Monday. And you know what? Maybe we'll bring it back every so often just to kind of show some homage to that and the good old days, right? And maybe every so often we'll have a conversation about some of the more elementary side of prepping, right? When I say that, what I mean is like, get back to like a zombie talk. Get back to a marauder talk. Let's talk about, a nuclear wasteland and how to survive it after the fallout, right? Like we can get back to that every so often because you know what? Things were like more fun then, weren't they? Things have gotten real lately, like real. And now, we're sitting here like, okay, I got to figure out my comms package, and then I need my FPV drone ready to go in case anything gets weird. Then I got to have thermal so I can verify whether or not anyone's looking at me from a distance, but also a thermal shield in case they have thermals, right? And it's like, man, we didn't need any of that when we were just talking about zombies, right? So, but I appreciate all of you 100%. Prepped in Kansas, I like how organized your live streams are. You don't seem to just be going off of the cuff. That is my goal, 100%. I try my best to maintain a level of clarity and consistency and a trajectory of conversation that is linear. So that way we have an hour where we go over things that are relevant and we don't lose track, and then we hopefully get good information out of the conversation, myself included, because reviewing this information reminds me of things that maybe I had forgot about or gives me new ideas to consider as well. So thank you so much for those kind words, Prepped in Kansas. I appreciate it, and I do the best I can. You guys, though, are the reasons why I do this. So thank you all as well. This community is amazing. I'm really privileged to be a part of it, and I hope that in 2025 we can really, grow things and move forward and keep doing what we do here, right? We do preparedness, we do information, we do some basic preps here and there, and we talk a lot about guns. And you know what? That's just because that's what I like to do. And I think it's going pretty well. So if you guys need anything else from me, go to magicprepper.com. You know what to do. There's discount codes, all kinds of stuff there. I am going to start the private live stream here in about 10 minutes. If you want to join the private live stream, go down below and click the join button. You can be a channel member, which gets you access to the private live stream. You'll go to my channel, go to the community tab, and you'll have the link right there for you. Or you can join the Subscribe Star, which is $5 a month and goes to support the channel directly. I do have some new concepts coming out for 2025 regarding Subscribe Star to make it even more of a value to those who want to be there. So I'm going to put that link in the live chat. It's also in the description of this live stream. And hopefully you guys have an excellent new year. I would love to see things improve. I hope, honestly, and I'm not just saying this because of like my personal political beliefs or anything like that, but I honestly hope that a change in the White House administration might be positive and could move us into a little bit more of a, let's just call it a buffer, right? And if we can get that buffer and give us more time to prepare and a better economy where we can afford to prepare more, then, well, I'll welcome that gladly, right? So, AD Strawwhat says, my wife only lets me watch Magic Prepper. Well, your wife is the GOAT, and we like her a lot around here. So, let's be honest, though. My wife is the GOAT, and your wife is a GOAT as well. You know, everything sounds weird. I'm going to have to just call it a night, apparently. You guys have a great night. Anything else you need from me at all? I know I already told you what to do. Thank you so much. Happy New Year, and I will see you in 2025.